Now they have our people scared of going to hell. God damn it, we dance on fire. What we are dealing with right now is a spiritual warfare. And I don't mean the spiritual warfare your pastors using fear mongering people in churches, talking about how your village people after you. No, not that one. We were attacked at the various vital parts of our core. And this is one of them, our spirituality. Some African Christians will still come by this video and they'll be so scared talking about how this is demonic. They would not even be curious to know what exactly is the power that is in here, because I want to know and I need that. I need that.
I don't know if it's just me, but one question I often think about is like, how do we as people living in today's society think of ourselves as the most advanced humans in history when in reality we can't fully prove that because we don't know what the they actually knew back then, and that's mainly because of colonialism. We already know how these kids of Columbus operated. The minute they touched down anywhere, they would either slaughter our ancestors or make them slaves, take what they thought was of value, and burn everything else to the ground. This means libraries, religious institutions, places containing information that's either political or economic, even medical information. Our ancestors could have easily had the cure to cancer, and we will never know. And thousands of years later, we are still suffering from the same problems that our ancestors could have had the solutions to.
It's not my intention to be divisive, but if I am being honest, I have some core feelings towards white people that I probably need to work through. And as a person of color, I very much understand racism and prejudice and how it impacts a person. I grew up in the South. I grew up around white people calling me the N-word. And it's not even just about what has happened in the South. When I look at this planet, sometimes, some time ago, I was trying to figure out, how do we quantify how much has been lost? What Europeans, what white people have done is they came in and they got to put a pause, they got to put a stop on everything. And whatever they stopped, they said, this is where it now starts with us. And because of that, do you know how much we have lost? We can't even fathom how much has been lost. If we could even fathom a fraction of it, we would be weeping. Who was it that they said decided that the planets revolved around the sun? Was it Copernicus? There were people on the continent of Africa who understood the stars and timing before they said Copernicus did.
One of those groups of people are the Dogon people, an ethnic group found in present-day Mali, West Africa, and they pass on their traditions and knowledge orally from generation to generation. And they have for thousands of years known that Earth revolves around the sun and that Jupiter has 4 major moons and Saturn has rings. They also have tales about aliens and spaceships that they said came from the Sirius star. And on Sirius, they've been known for a very, very long time that Sirius is approximately 8.6 light years from the Earth, and that Sirius has a companion star that is invincible to the human eye. Note that this companion star of Sirius that is not only invisible to the eye, it is also difficult to observe even through a microscope. But somehow these people have been known about this particular star, this companion star of Sirius, for years without even having a microscope or any other scientific equipment. They also explain that the star moves in a 50-year elliptical orbit around Sirius, and that it is small and incredibly heavy, and that it rotates on its axis. The Dogon people call this star Potolo, which means smallest seed. The Dogon people also maintain that there is a third star that exists in the Sirius system, and they call this star Emeya. When legends of the Dogon people started gaining traction, astronomers and scientists were in awe. They could not believe how astronomically precise the claims of the Dogon people were, especially seeing how they didn't have no telescopes or any scientific equipment for that matter. In 1970, there was no evidence for the third star, which the Dogon people call Emeya. However, in 1995, 2 French researchers, Daniel Benest and J.L. Duvent, authored an article in the Astronomy and Astrophysics journal titled "Is Sirius a Triple Star?" Based on observations of motions in the Sirius system, they suggested the possibility of a small third star there. And this is the annoying part, is how even though the Dogon people had talked about the third star Emeya, I just know they didn't believe them. Well, now that two white men, two French researchers, had come out and spoken about the possibility of this star existing, guess who now they would believe? White supremacy literally puts everybody at a standstill. Nothing gets validated until these people gives it validation. Nobody moves an inch until they say, oh, now you can move. Knowledge that we could have globally had like since day before yesterday, these people, because of their white supremacist mindset, will make you have it 200 years later. We cannot begin to imagine just how much this mindset is holding us back globally. And it gets worse when you now look at their present pattern of going to the past to go pick up things that they had once called demonic or uncivilized or backward or barbaric. Things that they had made us turn our backs on, like building with mods, for example. Now they are building with mods and calling it the future. I don't know about anyone else, but my brain won't bust just thinking about it. Because if your past is getting called the future, what does that say about your present? What does that say about where you think you are? What does that say about where you could have been if you had held on to that past and built on it and worked on it? Anyways, while controversy persists over the Dogon source of information on Sirius, the accuracy of their assertion continues to confound scientists and astronomers. And that's just one group of people. Now imagine that for like literally everybody. Imagine all of that knowledge, having it all like intact, exactly in entirety, 100% like raw like that. What we have now is a fraction of information. We cannot even begin to imagine what our world would have been looking like right now and what our lives would have been like with all of that knowledge. We can only imagine, and I think it's very sad.
There are things that we're starting to say, oh, we're telepathic, or we can read each other's minds, or we can't measure this thing, but it's just as real, it's just as credible. Do you know how much time has been lost? These things have been true for centuries. But because a certain demographic of people came in and said, we don't understand that, we're going to call you barbaric. And we're going to stick a pin in where we are today, and everything before today no longer existed, or we're going to call it barbaric, or we're going to start over from now. Do you know how much time has been lost in the scope of human history because a certain demographic of people came in and said, nope, toss that out?
And also, do you know just how many talents we lost during that period, that 400 plus years period that colonization and slavery spanned for, right? For 400 plus years, when the world was getting colonized and slavery was happening, the entire world was put on a pause, on a standstill, basically. Generations upon generations upon generations of people that were born during that period did not have the chance to do anything except think about how they are going to survive colonization and slavery, which means that these people did not have the time to exploit themselves and the talents that they had. Not to even talk about have the time to work on this talent, build on it, and create something out of it. So a lot was lost. Like we cannot even begin to imagine what these people could have done if they did not get colonized and enslaved, right? What could they have done? What would their contribution have been? And how would the world be looking like right now based off of that, their contribution and the things they could have created, invented? We cannot begin to imagine.
There are certain cultures in West Africa, when a woman is pregnant, elders will come and put their hand on the woman's belly, and they know the ancestor who is returning, they know the gender, and they know the purpose of that baby. Now what we're left with is you go to a doctor's office, they put a cold ass cream on your belly, and they print out a picture for you and say you're having a boy or a girl. Just like that entire experience is filtered down to nothingness. Imagine how many other things in the world have been filtered down to nothingness because brute, violent people who did not have a spiritual connection came along and saw other people with a spiritual connection and said, nope, that's barbaric, that's not real, put an end to that. And now we're going to reinvent what is true. But their reinvention could never measure up to the realness of what people of color and our ancestors have known for so long. This isn't just Black people from the continent of Africa. This also includes Asians. This includes people in South America. So much has been lost. If we could measure it, if we could say, okay, if we could take back everything that has been taken away or lost, and we envisioned where humanity could be, and then we looked at where we are now, we would crash the fuck out.
You can literally hear the pain, anger, frustration in Sis' voice, and every single freaking emotion she's feeling right now is very valid. And I think what really sometimes even angers me the most is the fact that when you bring it to the modern time, is how, to an extent, even you can still see some of the, should I say, censoring going on. Some, we are the ones now even doing it because we picked up, some of us have picked up the mantle from these people who are helping them carry their water now, right? So we too are, in a sense, even putting a pause on ourselves. And while, yes, I understand the history behind the behavior and the why, I still can't get peace at the fact that it's happening. When you hear things like certain pastors are going to certain villages and going to burn down sacred places like shrines and stuff because it's demonic, that's knowledge being burned down. No different from what the colonizers did. But because we've bought into this mindset, their way of thinking, bought into their rhetoric, pick up this book that they came with, now we are acting in the exact same way. Further putting a pause on us. My people would watch videos like this, for example, and they will be scared. They would not be curious to know, how are they doing that? I want to know, what knowledge is there that they know that I don't know? What's going on? What can we use this for beyond this particular thing that they are doing? They won't think that way. What my people would collectively be thinking about is how demonic it is, and how it's of the devil, and how if you do this, you are going to go to hell. And that's how they be going around demonizing these people, demonizing their practices, burning down their shrines, looking down on, speaking down on, spitting at, even metaphorically speaking, not literally, right? Which is no different from what them colonizers did. All of that behavior is leading to knowledge dying with these people. That's why I'm literally in my year of accountability, because yes, we can look at what these people did and how it negatively affected us and the world at large, but what are we doing today? Are we navigating in the exact same way? The power in African spirituality was just too much and they couldn't handle it.
Go and watch that whole video, okay? And you'll understand it from her perspective.
He's actually stitching my video, guys, for those of you who did not pick up on that. And I'll be posting my perspective after his video plays out. My video was filmed, hell, both our videos were filmed early 2023, right? But my video came first and then he stitched my video sharing his perspective. And to be quite honest with you guys, after watching his video, hearing his perspective, my horizon became a lot broader. So without further ado, I'm going to let his clip roll now and mine will come after.
Now, this is my analysis. Ladies and gentlemen, what you are watching here is not spirituality. It is absolutely not spirituality. For the lack of a better word, don't even use the word spirituality. This is science. If what these men are actually accomplishing in the video is not some form of deception of your senses, it is literally some type of science. So you Africans, this is where you demonstrate the ability to think. You need to begin to ask yourself, what exactly are these men doing and how come it produces this result? How can we turn this specific thing into something that is more, that has more utility, right? Something that can be utilized more. Let me give you an example. Smoke detectors. Apparently, smoke detectors were discovered or invented because they were trying to find a way to control the heat and the smoke and detect the heat in the space shuttle during the time when America was trying to go to the moon. But now you have a smoke detector in every house. because they took that science, they took that technology, and they found other utilities for it. You Africans need to begin to think that way. This is not mysterious. This is not spirituality. This is not information that is beyond anybody's ability to understand. You can take these things, study it, and even make it to where you can teach children in school. And guess what? Those children will now use their creativity to find different ways of using that stuff. We have millions of such things in Africa. You understand? We need to begin to study ourselves. But unfortunately, many of you people are still under the influence of colonization, right? So you have been taught to see African science as some form of taboo, especially if you come from the European influence or if you come from being under the influence of the Arabs. The Arabs will say, oh, that's a jinn, because they don't think the African man has the intelligence to somehow discover the ability to walk on fire, right? So you have to be using demonic powers because your brain cannot work like their own. When it comes to them, they say the Quran is full of science. But when they see an African man doing it, oh, it's a jinn, it's witchcraft. You see what I'm saying? Don't you think that using airplanes, using phones is also witchcraft? But if an African man was doing it in an African way, you people would say it was spirituality. It is not spirituality, my friends. It is African science. And what we need to do is begin to document these things, begin to catalog them and store them in libraries and spread that information so that more young children will have access to it. And it is the creativity of these young children that will take our ancient practices and give them a new face, a new image, a new way that we will develop it, and we'll even begin to export it. Listen, if a white man, a curious white scientist saw that, he will not begin to think in terms of demons. He will become curious to know which chemical are they using? What did they put on their feet? What is the purpose of those beads around their feet? How does the dancing and the movement help to prevent them from suffering from any types of serious burns? And if you also notice, those of you will notice that the firewood on the top is not burning either. So whatever they put on that firewood, they also put on their legs. Use your brain, ladies.
This right here is why we were Christianized. The power in African spirituality was just too much and they couldn't handle it. What they don't teach you in history is how we fought battles. The earlier battles during colonization were fought using African spirituality. And a lot of them were won because we had charms, we had jazz, we had, our spirituality protecting us. And even when you leave the continent, for those of you who have read on the Haitian Revolution, our African brothers and sisters in Haiti used their ancestral spiritual practices, voodoo, to free themselves. Our spirituality made us too powerful, and that is why it was attacked and demonized. And that is why it was sacrosanct to them that we became Christians, because they needed us spiritually weak. We were too spiritually strong for them to handle. Colonization wasn't just a physical attack, it was also a spiritual and a psychological attack. Now they have our people scared of going to hell. God damn it, we dance on fire. What we are dealing with right now is a spiritual warfare. And I don't mean the spiritual warfare your pastors using fear-mongering people in churches, talking about how your village people after you. No, not that one. We were attacked at the various vital parts of our core. And this is one of them, our spirituality. Some African Christians will still come by this video and they'll be so scared talking about how this is demonic. They would not even be curious to know what exactly is the power that is in here, because I want to know and I need that shit. I need that. I was watching a sister and she said they casted a spell on us using Christianity, and boy, oh boy, I agree. Because ask me why we have a group of people who know in their hearts of hearts that they cannot do this using the Bible, but still they are just so scared to even be curious, because Christianity have made them believe that even curiosity can send you to hell.
I don't know if it's just me, but one question I often think about is like, how do we as people living in today's society think of ourselves as the most advanced humans in history, when in reality we can't fully prove that, because we don't know what the they actually knew back then, and that's mainly because of colonialism. We already know how these kids of Columbus operated. The minute they touched down anywhere, they would either slaughter our ancestors or make them slaves, take what they thought was of value, and burn everything else to the ground. This means libraries, religious institutions, places containing information that's either political or economic, even medical information. Our ancestors could have easily had the cure to cancer, and we will never know. And thousands of years later, we are still suffering from the same problems that our ancestors could have had the solutions to. And that's because these ignorant motherfuckers went around the world with this delusion of bringing civilization to a bunch of savages, when in reality, they lack the most information out of everybody else on the fucking planet. And the worst part about it is they are making money off of the same problems that they created. It just, bro, I be thinking about that shit all the time. Like, how much information was lost, bro? Like, how much did they actually set humanity back? I'm pretty sure it's thousands of years, bro. And the worst part about it is you can't trust like these archaeologists and shit because they put their whiteness over their fucking profession. And they're just professional grave robbers. So even if they do got the information, they stole it and they're not giving it to nobody, or they completely destroyed it because they didn't think it was worth nothing.
And that's a very valid point right there. Not to even talk about the fact that during their quote unquote archaeological research, I'm sure that they are coming by information that have proven them wrong multiple times, but they would not make this information public because that goes against their white supremacist rhetoric. And this is why, just as they put their whiteness first and above everything, I actually believe that we should do the same. We should put our blackness, our Africanness first and above everything. Hence why we should start gatekeeping more. Because for one, the more we allow these people into our spaces, the more they are taking our stuff. Because that's another point. When these people go for their research, they are taking things and taking them over there to Europe or America or whatnot, keeping them in their museums. That's another way of the modern day looting, a bit pillaging of Africa that goes on under the guise of their quote unquote researching that goes on this continent. They are coming to dig up and take away the remnants of the things that they were not able to take during colonization. And then they go lock these things up in a box somewhere over in Europe. And we know how they be with their laws, right? These are European laws that they used to thief, talking about some finders keepers. We know that, right? And then when a time comes where we now have African researchers who want to go and actually do research on the continent and dig up stuff and investigate and do all of this stuff, guess what? The ground will be empty. There's nothing there because then people have dug up everything and took them all the way to Europe. Then you now start having to ask these people for permission to be able to have access to these things. Like, just imagine how insane that would be, which would be the exact same way it is now with our artifacts that are in their museum that we're constantly having to talk about when would you return, and they'll be looking at us like, return what? Like it's ours, we're not returning shit. That's how it's going to be with those things as well in the future with researchers. They are going to be asking for permission for these people to grant them access to these things, and they won't. And another reason why they would not want to give African researchers access to these things is because of the fear of, oh, what if these African researchers find out about things and make public things that we would rather remain private, things that we would rather the public don't know about. Like, you get, so it's just I can keep going on and on and on and on, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to end this video here. And I know some people might come now and say, oh, AV, it's not that deep. It's that deep to me. Well, let me know down below in the comment section what you think about all of this. Let's continue this conversation down there. And of course, as always, I'll be catching you in the next one. Bye. Dagon people. The things that have been said that those people knew and the knowledge that they had, even about aliens, I've read.